She walked with a cane, wore slippers, and carried nothing but a bottle of heart pills. 3 minutes later, she was face down in a pool of blood, shot by a cop who thought she looked like trouble. Her name was Loretta Hayes, 73 years old, a retired school teacher, church elder, grandmother of 5. And on that quiet Tuesday night in Claiborne County, Georgia, all she wanted was to buy medicine for her husband's failing heart. The evening air was humid, like it always was in late August. Loretta tightened the scarf around her head, locked the front door of the small brick house she had lived in for over 40 years, and carefully stepped down the porch. Her husband Reggie had suffered a dizzy spell. His blood pressure pills were out. The local pharmacy had already closed, so Loretta made the decision. She would walk the 5 blocks to Riverside Express, the only 24-hour store left in their side of town. She didn't call anyone for help. That wasn't her way. She'd buried 2 brothers, raised 3 children, survived a stroke, walking down the street to get some medication. That was nothing. With her cane tapping gently along the sidewalk and a small purse clutched under her arm, Loretta crossed Maple Avenue. The streetlights flickered above her. A soft gospel song played from a nearby porch. And somewhere in the dark, a 911 call had just been made. "Yes, I'd like to report something suspicious. There's an elderly black woman walking near the church parking lot. I think she's casing cars. She's got something in her hand. Please send someone." That call reached Officer Paul Dunning, who was finishing his shift early in his patrol car just 2 blocks away. He heard, "Black woman." He heard suspicious. And that's all it took. Dunning pulled his cruiser around the corner fast, headlights off. As he turned onto Willow Street, his high beams hit a small, slow-moving figure in the middle of the sidewalk. An old woman wrapped in a shawl, holding a cane. To Dunning, it didn't matter. Suspicious meant dangerous, and black meant, don't wait to find out. He slammed the brakes and jumped out of the vehicle, drawing his gun in one motion. "Hey, drop whatever's in your hand. Let me see your hands." Loretta turned around, startled. She lifted one hand off the cane instinctively. "Sir, what's wrong?" she asked, confused. "I said drop it. On the ground, now. This is my walking stick. I'm just—" The next command never came, because the gunshot did. 1 round, straight to the chest. Loretta fell backwards, her purse hitting the pavement, her cane rolling to the edge of the curb. The bottle of pills she had just bought cracked open, heart medication scattering like tiny white beads across the concrete. For a moment, the street was silent. Then someone screamed. From across the road, a man smoking on his porch dropped his phone. Another neighbor ran out of his house barefoot, yelling, "What the hell did you just do?" But Officer Dunning wasn't looking at them. He stood there, gun still raised, frozen. Loretta Hayes didn't move. 5 minutes later, she was declared dead at the scene. The official report would say, subject did not comply with verbal commands. Officer feared for his safety. But what that report didn't include was that Loretta was half deaf in her right ear from a stroke 5 years ago, or that the weapon she was holding was a cane she'd had for a decade. It didn't mention the receipt in her purse from Riverside Express, time-stamped 9:37 p.m., just 3 minutes before the bullet hit her chest. Or the bottle of pills for Reggie, who would wake up hours later and never see his wife again. The next morning, a blurry cell phone video surfaced. Someone had recorded the entire encounter from across the street, Loretta standing still, confused, asking what she had done. Then the shot. Then the fall. Within hours, hashtags exploded across social media. Justice for Loretta, walking while black, Claiborne County cover-up. And buried beneath headlines and outrage, a plane ticket was booked under the name Malik R. Hayes, an attorney based in D.C., former Army JAG officer. Loretta's only son. When he got the call, he didn't cry. He didn't ask why. He just said, "Tell them I'm coming home, and tell them not to bury her until I see her." Because what Officer Dunning didn't know was that by pulling that trigger, he hadn't just killed a woman. He had started a war he wouldn't survive. The plane touched down at 7:42 a.m. Malik Hayes stepped off with a single black carry-on and a heart that hadn't rested since the call. He hadn't been back to Claiborne in 6 years, not since the funeral of his father's sister. He'd always told himself he was too busy. A defense attorney in D.C., high-profile cases, military tribunals. But deep down, he knew the truth. He didn't want to come back because the air in Claiborne still smelled like Jim Crow, even in 2024. Now his mother was gone, shot in the chest by a man in uniform, and no one even had the decency to call him directly. He found out from his cousin, who saw it on Facebook. He drove straight from the airport to the scene, didn't stop at a hotel, didn't call his father. Just parked on the corner of Willow Street and Maple, and stood in front of the dark stain on the concrete sidewalk. There were still shards of the pill bottle in the gutter. Someone had left a bunch of plastic flowers, a laminated photo of his mom taped to a streetlight pole, a candle burned halfway down in a jar. Malik didn't cry, he just stared. Then he pulled out his phone and started recording. Loretta Hayes, 73 years old, retired schoolteacher. Mother, grandmother, shot right here in front of her own neighborhood. This is where they left her. This is where he pulled the trigger. And this is where I begin. The investigation begins. Malik wasn't just grieving, he was building a case, 1 minute at a time. He went to the convenience store where his mother bought the pills. The clerk still remembered her. She said her husband's blood pressure was acting up, paid cash, said God bless me on the way out. Timestamp on the receipt. 9:37 police dispatch log says the shot was fired at 9:40 p.m. 3 minutes. He pulled the 911 transcript. The caller was anonymous, no name, no address, just a claim. There's a suspicious black woman near the parking lot. She's holding something. Malik got access to the body cam footage through a legal loophole as a licensed attorney representing the family. What he saw nearly broke him. The footage showed Dunning approaching with his gun already drawn, yelling, aggressive. Loretta, disoriented, clearly confused, trying to speak. No threat, no sudden movements, just an old woman standing on the sidewalk. Then the gunshot. No warning shot, no de-escalation, just an execution. And then, he found the pattern. The next piece came from an unlikely source, a young black officer named Jamal Rivers, who pulled Malik aside quietly after the funeral. Look, I'm not supposed to talk, but Dunning's been protected for years, Jamal whispered. There was a case last year, teenage boy, broken arm. Internal Affairs said it was excessive force, but it disappeared. And there's more. The files are buried deep. Malik leaned in. Can you get them to me? Jamal didn't answer. He just nodded once. 3 days later, a manila folder slid under the door of Malik's motel room at 2 a.m. Inside were 3 use-of-force complaints, all against Officer Paul Dunning. All involved black citizens. None led to any discipline. Malik knew what he had now wasn't just a tragedy, it was a pattern. And patterns win cases. The press conference. On the 7th day after Loretta's death, Malik stood on the courthouse steps wearing his late mother's favorite brooch pinned to his lapel. Cameras flashed, microphones clicked on. He took a breath, then spoke with the calm, lethal cadence of a man who had nothing left to lose. My mother was not a threat. She was not armed. She was 73 years old, walking home with medication for her husband. Officer Dunning claims he feared for his life. But what he feared was not her cane. It was her blackness, her presence, her dignity. He raised the body cam screenshot. This is the moment before he shot her. Tell me, where's the threat? Reporters murmured. Social media lit up in real time. CNN picked it up within the hour. By sundown, Loretta Hayes was trending across 4 platforms. And within 48 hours, Officer Paul Dunning was placed on unpaid administrative leave. But Malik wasn't satisfied, because his mother wasn't on leave. She was in the ground. A storm was coming behind closed doors. The city officials begged Malik to settle. We can offer a payout, Mr. Hayes, a full internal review, maybe even a resignation, if you back off the criminal charges. He looked them dead in the eyes. You think this is about money? No. This is about the law. And for once, the law is about to work for people like my mother. As the DA weighed whether to press charges, Malik submitted his full case file to the state attorney general. He had everything: body cam proof, witness statements, use of force history, medical reports, a racial profiling expert on standby, and one final wild card, coming soon. Because what no one knew yet was, Malik wasn't just going to prosecute, he was going to push for the death penalty. And he had the legal credentials and the public firestorm to force it through. Because he didn't just lose a mother. He lost justice, and now he was going to make the system bleed for it. Claiborne County Police Department was a fortress of silence. Emails went unanswered, phone calls redirected, requests for public records were delayed due to volume. But Malik Hayes had no intention of going away. He wasn't a grieving son anymore. He was a prosecutor in everything but title. And he knew one universal truth about police corruption. If they're hiding something, they've already buried it. And the deeper the hole, the uglier what's inside. It started with a tip from a retired clerk named Mrs. Geraldine Sims. She'd worked at CPD Records for over 30 years. She called Molly late one evening. "You didn't hear this from me, but there's a folder. No case number, not digitized, locked in the captain's file cabinet. Paul Dunning's name is on the tab. And I remember the label. It read, Use of Force C. James. That was the boy's name. Curtis James." Malik tracked it down within 48 hours. Curtis James, 16 years old, no criminal record, honor roll student, shot in the shoulder 3 years ago during what Dunning claimed was a resisting arrest incident. But here's what the folder revealed. No body cam footage ever submitted, no formal complaint filed, parents paid off under NDA, Curtis transferred schools after death threats worse. A single handwritten note attached to the file read, "Handled. No further inquiry." Malik went digging further. He found 2 more victims. Ramon Wilkes, 27, choked unconscious during a traffic stop for a broken taillight, suffered permanent nerve damage. Leticia Morris, 34, tackled in front of her children after asking why she was being detained outside a grocery store. Neither case made the news. Both were quietly settled out of court, and both involved Officer Paul Dunning. Malik compiled everything into a single legal document, motion to establish pattern of racially motivated violence. Then came the unexpected ally, Officer Jamal Rivers again. One night he left a USB in Malik's motel mailbox. No note, no name. Inside was a folder marked IA Reports Suppressed. It contained 7 internal complaints against Dunning, 5 from fellow officers, 2 from civilians, all citing aggressive behavior, escalation without provocation, and bias toward minority civilians. One chilling line from a fellow officer read, "Dunning talks about black suspects like they're animals. Says they only learn through pain." Another complaint included a text thread where Dunning joked about getting his numbers up this month, referring to arrests of black residents. None of the complaints had ever been pursued. Malik uncovered that the mayor's office had approved payouts totaling over $240,000 related to Dunning's past behavior, all under confidentiality agreements. He confronted the mayor in public. "Did you sign off on those settlements, knowing this officer had a violent history?" The mayor stammered. We trusted the judgment of the police department. There was no proof of wrongdoing." Malik pulled out a printed email from the IA report. "Then explain this memo, from your chief of staff, dated 6 months ago. It says, and I quote, 'Keep Dunning out of high-traffic black neighborhoods. We can't afford another lawsuit.'" The press was there, so were the cameras. The mayor didn't answer. He just walked away. The weight of evidence became undeniable. Malik submitted everything to the district attorney's office, now under massive public pressure. Within days, a grand jury was convened. They reviewed the body cam footage, the suppressed IA reports, medical records of past victims, the 911 call metadata, the payout documents. After 3 hours, they returned a recommendation: charge Officer Paul Dunning with first-degree murder and pursue the death penalty. The country erupted. Cable news debates, talk radio firestorms. Civil rights groups called it a turning point. Some called it justice, others called it mob rule. But no one called it silence. Behind bars for the first time in his life, Officer Paul Dunning made a statement through his attorney. "This is a political prosecution. My client acted within protocol. He feared for his life. The suspect did not comply." Malik responded that same evening on national television. "My mother was not a suspect. She was a citizen, a grandmother. And when your fear kills the innocent, that's not policing. That's murder." And then something unexpected arrived in Malik's inbox. An email from Leticia Morris, one of Dunning's past victims. She wrote, "When he slammed me into the hood of my car, my daughter peed herself screaming. I didn't file a lawsuit because I was afraid. But now I'm not. Your mother was braver than all of us, and if you need me to testify, I'll be there." By now, the case had crossed state lines. Dozens of attorneys offered support. Civil rights orgs pledged resources. Even national leaders began weighing in. But Malik didn't want attention. He wanted accountability. And that meant one thing: a courtroom, a jury, a verdict, and a sentence that would leave no doubt. The courtroom was packed by 8 a.m. National networks had set up outside since dawn. Protesters lined the courthouse steps holding signs that read, "She had a cane, not a gun. Justice for Loretta. If this isn't murder, what is?" Inside, the temperature felt 10 degrees hotter, not from the air, but from the eyes. The country was watching, and for the first time in U.S. history, a white police officer stood trial for the death of an unarmed black senior citizen with the death penalty on the table. The state of Georgia versus Paul Dunning wasn't just a case. It was a reckoning. Malik stood at the plaintiff's table. Not just a grieving son, but now lead special prosecutor sworn in under emergency powers after a unanimous motion from the state bar. He wore a charcoal suit, no tie, and a brooch shaped like a dove, his mother's favorite symbol. His opening statement was short, measured, quiet. "My mother's name was Loretta Hayes. She was 73 years old. She was walking home from the store with heart medicine for her husband. She did not threaten anyone. She did not break any laws. She was stopped, shouted at, and shot. And the man who pulled the trigger is sitting in this room." Paul Dunning's lawyers tried to lean on standard protocol. They claimed Dunning followed training, that he was responding to a 911 call, and that he feared the object in Loretta's hand was a weapon. They showed still frames of her turning, of shadows from the street lamp distorting the cane. But the jury didn't blink, because then Malik played the full body cam footage. The courtroom fell silent as Loretta's voice rang out. "Sir, what's wrong?" Then a pause, then a scream, then the gunshot. Malik pressed pause, let the still image of Loretta collapsing hang on the screen like a gravestone. "Tell me," he said softly to the jury, "what part of this looks like fear, and what part of it looks like a decision?" Witnesses, take the stand. 1. The pharmacist verified the medication purchased minutes before the incident. She was calm, smiling, said her husband was feeling faint. 2. Officer Jamal Rivers broke the department's silence. "There's been a pattern. Dunning has used force disproportionately against black citizens. We all knew it. We just weren't allowed to say it." 3. Letitia Morris, a former victim of Dunning, now standing strong. "When he slammed me to the ground in front of my kids, I thought I was going to die. I stayed quiet then, but I won't stay quiet now." The defense tried to shake Letitia. "Miss Morris, you signed a non-disclosure agreement, did you not?" "Yes," she replied. "So legally you weren't supposed to testify today, correct?" She looked at the jury. "If signing silence helped to kill her, then I broke the wrong law." The courtroom broke into applause before the judge called for order. A former training supervisor from Dunning's police academy appeared, subpoenaed quietly by Malik. She delivered the bombshell. Dunning failed his de-escalation module twice. We raised concerns about his temperament, but he was pushed through anyway. We were told not to block promising white recruits over minor technicalities. The jury turned to Dunning. For the first time during the trial, he looked down. Malik stood slowly. The room held its breath. "You've seen the footage. You've heard the testimonies. You know the truth. But this case isn't just about one officer pulling a trigger. It's about what happens when a system teaches him that pulling it is okay, that fear excuses murder, that black skin is suspicious by default." He walked to the jury box, voice calm but piercing. "My mother deserved to grow old in peace. Instead, she died on the pavement, gunned down by someone who never saw her as human. This is not a mistake. This is a pattern, and it ends today." After just 4 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The courtroom went still as the foreman stood. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Paul Dunning, guilty on all counts." Murmurs rose, tears spilled, but then the judge asked the second question. "Does the jury recommend the maximum sentence allowable by state law?" A pause. Then, "Yes, Your Honor. We recommend the death penalty." The headline hit every screen within minutes. "White cop sentenced to death for killing unarmed black grandmother." Some called it historic, others called it dangerous, but everyone called it unprecedented. Protests turned into prayer circles. Streets once filled with anger now echoed with quiet justice. But Malik Hayes didn't speak to the press that night. He drove back to the house on Maple Avenue. Reggie, his father, waited by the window with the porch light on, and Malik sat beside him, placing his mother's brooch on the table. "She got justice, Pop," he whispered, "but it won't bring her back." His father nodded, eyes glassy. "No, son, but it might save someone else's mama." There was no celebration, no applause, no shouts of victory. When the jury delivered the death sentence, the courtroom didn't erupt. It went still. But that silence wasn't empty. It was filled with everything that should have never happened, filled with the weight of a life lost and the ache of a justice that came too late. Reporters crowded the steps. Microphones reached toward Malik Hayes as he exited the building. Flashes lit up his face, but his eyes didn't flinch. He spoke just once into the cameras. "Justice isn't loud. It doesn't cheer when someone is sentenced to die. Justice is quiet. It's the space where people like my mother should have been allowed to grow old in peace." Then he turned and walked away, leaving the noise behind. 2 weeks later, Malik sat alone in his mother's living room. The lavender scent of her favorite candles still lingered in the curtains. The porch had been scrubbed clean, the blood long gone. But the memory stayed. He opened her sewing cabinet and found a small brown notebook. Inside were family recipes, half-written letters, and a quote written in her hand. "Don't raise your voice, Loretta. Let your life be the loudest thing they hear." Malik closed the book and held it to his chest. He didn't cry. He just listened to the silence she had left behind. In the quiet nights that followed, Malik wrote a letter to Paul Dunning. He never mailed it, but he kept it. Folded, worn at the edges. And it read, "You thought you were stopping a threat, but you stopped a heartbeat. My mother's. You didn't just kill her, you fractured a family. And when you pulled that trigger, you proved that you feared what you didn't understand. But you also taught me something. That justice, when demanded loud enough, can reach even the darkest corners. You thought your badge would protect you? It didn't. It buried you." After the verdict, real change began. The Claiborne Police Department was placed under federal investigation. 3 senior officers resigned. A bill named Loretta's Law passed statewide, mandating independent investigations for all officer-involved shootings. Her name was etched into more than stone. It became a scholarship fund, a community legal clinic, a case study in every major law school in the country. Malik didn't return to Washington. He stayed. He began mentoring law students. He spoke at forums about police reform. And every Sunday, he walked his father to the church where his mother used to sing. Sometimes they passed the spot on the sidewalk where she fell. Malik would stop and look at it, not with rage, but with resolve. Because justice had come. But the work was not done. One afternoon, as Malik exited a youth legal workshop, a little girl no older than 9 walked up to him. Her hair was braided tight. She held a notepad in her hand. "Mr. Hayes?" she said. "Yes?" "My grandma said your mama used to bring her cornbread at church. She said she was real kind. I want to be a lawyer too. Like you." Malik crouched down, smiled softly. "Then you go be one. Be better than me. And when someone tells you to be quiet, you tell them Loretta Hayes didn't." She grinned and ran back to her friends. And in that moment, the silence that once echoed with pain now carried hope. Because sometimes, the loudest sentence is the one spoken without a single word. A verdict, yes, but also a vow. That black lives do matter, that justice can rise, and that a grandmother with a cane and a heart full of grace can still change a nation.